Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're back with the course Fundamentals of Public Relations, bearing the code GMC 331, as well as the course Advertising for Media, bearing the code GMC 332. It's a 26th lecture, and the topic today is Public Service Announcements. Perhaps the most effective and least understood form of communication for non-profit organizations is the public service announcement. With a storied history that goes back to World War II, war-worn efforts, and the famous loose lips sink ships warning, the BSA has grown into a powerful mechanism that allows non-profits to tell a story, promote a cause, incite change, raise awareness, or educate the public. Some marketers might think that the public service announcements PSA is reserved for the so-called major nonprofits, but any community organization with a solid message can take advantage of this highly targeted communications opportunity to reach engaged listeners or viewers across the country. PSAs are aired at no charge by stations and often remain on the air for multiple weeks. This exposure can significantly increase the potential reach of a message originating from non-profit organizations with a limited budget. The secret to an effective PSA campaign, however, lies in the writing and the production of the piece so that it is impactful, will attract attention and motivate action. Now, this is where both advertising and public relations come in. Many organizations need public relations, and for that matter, using public service messages and public service announcements is an excellent way to use minimum budget to gain maximum reach. Same is the case, advertising comes in because usually advertising agencies and the people at the back of the advertising industry are hired for making public service announcements and public service messages. So we'll be discussing public service announcements, which are also called public service messages. PSAs are short spots on radio and television that organizations use to reach an audience instead of through news releases or paid commercials. PSAs, as they are commonly known, are similar to news releases in that they usually announce something and provide information of interest to the public. They are similar to advertisements with the same structure, form, and length. PSAs are different than the other public relations forms in these respects that PSAs are unpaid radio and television promotions. PSAs are available only to non-profit organizations, government agencies, or civic groups that serve the public interest. PSAs advance an idea or policy, educate the public, or garner support for the activities of the organizations that serve the public. Now the question is, what is a public service announcement? Public service announcements or PSAs are short messages produced on film or audio file and given to radio and television stations. Generally, PSAs are sent as ready-to-air audio or video files, although radio stations, especially community or public stations such as campus radio or Radio Pakistan affiliates, sometimes prefer a script that their announcers can read live on the air. They can be done very simply with a single actor reading or performing a message, or they can be elaborate, slickly produced messages with music, dramatic storylines, and sound or visual effects. Broadcast media, radio, and television are required by MEMRA to serve in the public interest. Most stations use PSAs as one of the ways they meet this requirement. While they aren't required to donate a fixed percentage of airtime per day to PSAs, stations do have to state in their licensing and renewal application how much airtime they plan to devote to PSAs. Most stations donate about a third of their commercial spots to non-commercial causes. In other words, if a station has 18 minutes of commercials in a given hour, 6 minutes of that will probably be devoted to PSAs. So, which means big thing it is. Now, some of the advantages of PSAs. PSAs are generally inexpensive. Since the airtime is donated, your only cost is production. If you keep to a tight budget, you can make PSAs very cheaply. Secondly, most stations will allow you to include a telephone number for more information in your PSA. Then PSAs tend to be really effective at encouraging the audience to do something. I'm going to share some examples with you. For example, to do something might be like call a phone number for more information, or have your house sprayed, or for antibacterials and stuff. So these are really effective. Third, PSAs can raise awareness of your issue. So you can get a lot of reach while spending very little, comparatively spending very little. But PSAs have their limitations as well. Because PSAs depend on donated time, you'll often find you're not able to get them run on all the media outlets you would like to, or you may find yourself at the mercy of the station staff members who may be overworked, arbitrary, or personally opposed to your group's work. PSAs are often run as filler in the middle of the night or during other times when only a few people are listening or watching. The competition among non-profit groups for free airtime is very stiff. Depending on the market, there could be hundreds of other groups competing for the time on any given station. You may not be able to count on getting a lot of airtime for your PSA. So this is a limitation of PSAs. Then stations tend to shy away from controversial PSAs. If your group focuses on an issue that is the subject of heated public debate, for example, transgender rights, religious liberty, for example, you may have a hard time convincing stations to run your PSA. Then another limitation, stations may not track and report when your PSA have been played. But they will do this for paid advertising. For paid advertising, they provide a track report of when the advertisement was played. But for PSAs, they might not provide you with that. So PSAs do require a bit of work on your part, and they tend to be ineffective at influencing policy. You may consider them more when you have a specific action you want the viewer or listener to take, or coordinate with other activities designed to influence people's behavior. So you cannot solely depend on PSAs. Now let's move towards an understanding of the features of PSA. Typically, PSAs are short, usually 60 seconds or less, but there are longer ones as well, especially with social media. Now there is a trend of longer PSAs because there's so many public that is watching them on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff. So you can have longer ones as well. The PSAs usually present one single issue. They inform the viewer of key relevant facts, and they have a clear call to action usually indicated through text on screen. They might or might not include people. They might or might not use music. Sometimes PSAs use voiceovers. Sometimes they use special effects like black and white. They might use transitions or editing to enhance the video, but actually the aim is to leave a lasting impact. So a strong PSA is one that leaves a lasting impact. Here I would like to share a PSA with you, and then we'll move towards further with the discussion of PSAs. Please watch carefully. I would appreciate if you do not take a break in between so that you understand the power of a PSA.
ये पैगाम आवाम की खिदमत में वजारत कानून और इंसाफ पाकिस्तान ने पेश किया है।
रेलवे से आती वो लोगों की बात गाड़ी गाड़ी थी वो गाड़ी थी हमारी बच्ची बैठ के ट्रेन पे आ गई मेरे वोट क्या क्या कर रहे हो क्यों क्या कर रहे
तुम्हें समझ नहीं, मुझे हैरत है, कत्ल में कौन सी गैरत है। गैरत के नाम पर कत्ल कानूनन जुर्म है। 2016 के तरमीमी बिल के मुताबिक गैरत के नाम पर कत्ल की सजा सजाए मौत है। कत्ल करने वालों को खानदान वाले सिर्फ उस सूरत में सजाए मौत से बचा सकते हैं अगर मुल्जिम किसास या दियत देने पर राजी हो जाए। इसके बावजूद उसे 14 साल की कैद लाजमी होगी।
Did you experience the strength of this advertisement, of this public service message? I've watched it a couple of times and I never fail to grasp the strength of the message. So they are a very strong way, a very powerful way of communicating your message. Having said that, let's move towards making an effective PSC campaign. Well, the secret to an effective PSC campaign, however, lies in the writing and production of the piece so that it is impactful, so that it will attract attention and motivate action. So, you've just seen a very powerful, a very impactful PSA. I'll just share some expert advice on what makes an exceptional PSA. First of all, be selective. Stations receive a large quantity of PSA submissions, so they make choices about which ones they'll run. Don't overwhelm the stations by sending a PSA every time the organization wants to say something. Carefully plan your campaign and its message. Then be professional. Stations have to maintain listener attention, so your PSA must be produced in accordance with broadcast standards. PSAs can be created as 10, 15, 30, and 60-second versions to allow for maximum play flexibility. Provide them to stations in both a pre-recorded and scripted version for live reads, as some stations prefer to use their own talent to deliver the message, which we have already discussed. As for TV, obviously for video ones, they are different. Then be inclusive. Unless you have a specifically defined target audience, don't focus on just one age group or ethnic group. Make sure your PSA appeals to men, women, younger listeners, and seniors. Or be creative. Don't bore the audience. Did you get bored in the last PSA? No? You want something that will make the listener stop what they're doing and think, yes, I can support that. Or, I didn't know that. Have an attention-catching opening. Use professional voice talent. Add music and sound effects if appropriate. And close with a strong call to action. Tell a story that resonates with the radio listeners or television viewers and provides some type of community benefit so that it will improve your chances of getting your PSA on air. Now, how do you need to write a PSA? Decide upon and clarify the purpose of your PSA first. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish by putting a PSA on the air? And for that matter, why use a PSA instead of other publicity outlets? Then decide upon your target audience. target your audience, what type of people you are hoping to reach through your PSA. This will help you focus in both your desired media outlets and also upon your PSA content. Then survey your media outlets to best reach that audience. That means that you need to know what media outlets are available in your particular geographic area. Prioritize your media outlets. That is, you need to know which outlets your target audience is most likely to prefer. For example, is your audience more likely to tune into the 24-hour contemporary music station than to the one that plays mostly golden oldies? If so, then you point towards the contemporary music outlet. So, for example, whichever it is, I'm just using the examples from radio only, but obviously you get my point. It's true for all broadcast media. Also, when does your audience tend to tune into these outlets? For example, is your desired audience a bunch of early risers? Then you would probably want to reach them early in the morning as opposed to late at night, if you possibly can. However, don't count on being able to pick the time of the day for your PSA to run. That's why getting to know your media personnel is so important. It's easier to ask a favor of someone you know. So approach your preferred media outlet. Here you want to make a personal contact as best as you can, directly with the station manager in small markets, or with the person who's responsible for choosing PSAs for broadcast. A phone call is good, a personal meeting is better. Find out a bit about their requirements for PSAs, what format they want to receive them in, preferred length, when to submit them, etc., etc. See how do you get your PSA on the air later. So, like before you do it all and then you get into it, how do you get your PSA on air? It's better to get to know these informations in advance while writing your PSA. So then comes the writing part. The actual writing waits until this point because first you need to know your goals and then your audience, then your market and their policies or whatever preferred format they have for PSA. Now the key points about writing. Because you've only got a few seconds to reach your audience, at times it is for radio, it is often 30 seconds or even less. The language should be simple and vivid. Take your time and make every word count. Make your message crystal clear. The content of the writing should have the right hooks, words or phrases that grab attention to attract your audience. Again, you need to know who your audience is. For example, starting your PSA off with something like, if you are between the ages of 25 and 44, you are more likely to die from XYZ epidemic than from any other disease. So, you need to grab attention. The PSA should usually, though may not be 100% of the time, request a specific action, such as calling a specific number to get more information. You ordinarily want listeners to do something as a result of having heard a PSA. Now, getting ready to write your PSA. First of all, choose points to focus on. Don't overload the viewer or listener with too many different messages. List all the possible messages you would like to get into the public mind and then decide on the one or two most vital points. For example, if your group educates people about asthma, you might narrow it down to a simple focus point like, if you have asthma, you shouldn't smoke. See? So you need to focus. Then brainstorm. This is also a good time to look at the PSAs that others have done for ideas. Get together with your peers to toss around ideas about ways you can illustrate the main point or points you have chosen. If possible, Include members of your target group in this process. This is very important. I've seen so many people failing at the campaigns because they did not take the target audience on board. You need someone from the target audience because they can give you the perspective of the receiver or of the audience. If you're aiming, for example, your PSA at university students, for example, be sure to invite some university students to take part in brainstorming. Then third, check your facts. It's extremely important for your PSA to be accurate. Any facts should be checked and verified before sending the PSA in. Is the information up to date? If there are any demonstrations included in the PSA, are they done clearly and correctly? So you need to check it out. Then identify a hook. A hook is whatever you use to grab the listener or viewer's attention. How are you going to keep them from changing the channel or leaving the room or letting their attention drift when your PSA comes in? A hook can be something funny. It can be catchy music. It can be a shocking statistic. It can be an emotional appeal. Whatever makes the listener or viewer interested enough to watch or listen to the rest of your PSA. For example, if you are aiming for Pashtun listeners, your hook might be to have your PSA use rabab as background music. So, having done these, now you're ready to write your script. Now, the basic guidelines for PSA format. Stations have to maintain listener attention, so your PSA must be produced in accordance with broadcast standards. I've already told you that these can be created for 10, 15, 30 and 60-second versions, allowing for maximum play flexibility. And you can provide the stations with pre-recorded and scripted versions for live reads. Most stations actually prefer 30-second spots. If you're writing a television PSA, you'll want to keep the announcer's copy 2-3 seconds shorter than the entire length of the PSA. Television stations run on a much tighter, more rigid schedule than radio stations, and you may find that if your PSA runs exactly 30 seconds, for example, the station may sometimes cut off the end. So you need to know things well in advance. Tips for producing radio PSAs. Finding professional announcers is helpful but not vital. Volunteers at community or campus radio stations, people who read for the blind, and storytellers are all experienced in doing voiceover work. Just to keep your target group in mind when choosing actors, people tend to respond better to those who sound like they might be their approximate age and background. In radio, your audience is usually doing at least one other thing in addition to listening. For example, they're doing driving, reading, partying, studying, working, gardening, cleaning, cooking, whatever. So it is important to grab the audience's attention quickly and hold it. Try to use short, arresting sentences aimed directly at the listener at the beginning of the PSA to grab their attention. For example, your heart could be a ticking time bomb. Has one or both of your parents had the heart disease? If so, your chances of developing heart disease later in life are a lot higher than for most people. See? So if it starts like your heart could be a ticking time bomb, ultimately it's like there and then it attracts attention of the listener. Now, tips for producing television PSAs. You have to tell the TV staff exactly what you want them to film. You must describe each shot in writing and give the correct dialogue to go with that shot. Drama clubs, community theatre groups, and the drama departments at for example, the university are great places to find talent, and most of the members are eager for experience. If you are producing a television spot yourself, make up a storyboard for your script before you begin shooting. A storyboard shows sketches of photos of each individual spot in a television piece. It helps the director figure out how the entire piece will flow and what sort of camera angles and staging needs to be set up. You need to avoid special effects. They are generally costly and they're generally costly and usually only distract viewers from the message. Here again, I would like to share a PSA with you. So here is another advertisement. Now it's totally different. Let's watch this one. This was again a powerful PSA, but now this was totally different. It was very low budget PSA, but it also stated its point very clearly. So that's all for today. See you next time. Thanks.